everyone. Welcome back to Radio Free Market. I'm your guest host, Zoe Russell, taking over the reins from Michael McKay for today. This is a live show, so give us a call at 1-800-313-9443 if you want to call in and ask Dr. Walter Block any question you may have. We were just talking about homesteading and what homesteading means and why it's such an important function in private property.
Yes, homesteading is the traditional way in which you get to own land. There's virgin territory. You go out there and you clear the tree stumps and you put in some corn, and you then own those 100 acres or whatever it is that you cleared, and you now have homesteaded that land. The challenge is, well, how do you homestead or how do you put into private hands rivers, lakes, oceans, things like that? Because what I try to establish in the last segment is that if you don't, you have the tragedy of the commons where people tend to misuse and overuse the resource. Well, there are various ways that you could privatize. Remember, I'm in New Orleans, and we'll never forget Katrina and the overflow of the Mississippi River that landed in our basements and in our first floors. Well, if there was a Mississippi River Corporation that owned it and was responsible for it, presumably they do a better job than the Army Corps of Engineers, who don't lose money when something bad like this happens. But how do you get the Mississippi River Corporation to go in the first place? Well, one way is whoever homesteaded the Mississippi River. It's a little difficult this late in the day. I mean, if this had been done in, 1750, we might have had a clearer shot. How could we do it now? It's a little bit like unscrambling the egg, but the way I would say is take every city or every person that lives within 5 miles of the Mississippi River or 10 miles, and every person who has been on that river other than just once or twice as a rider in a cruise ship. And let's say there are 15 million such people that live there or work on the river regularly. Well, now what you do is you create this new thing called Mississippi River Corporation, and you have 15 million shares, and you give one share to everybody, and now that company is listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and you could buy more shares, you could sell your own share, and now you have a viable company that is responsible. And similarly for the Gulf of Mexico, you take New Orleans, you take a few cities in Florida, western Florida, you take a few cities in Texas, such as Houston, a few cities in Mexico, and let's say you have 50 million people. Well, you now have a company called the Gulf of Mexico Corporation, and it's owned, 50 million shares of it are owned initially, homesteaded by these people who can then buy and sell more shares. And now you have responsibility. Because if the Mississippi River Corporation, the Gulf of Mexico Corporation allows BP to drill for oil, it's going to be a lot more careful than the Minerals Management Service, who were accused of, watching pornography when they should have been on the job. And in any case, the MMS doesn't lose money when you have the spill, nor does Obama. Whereas this company would lose a lot of money, so it would have a much greater incentive to make sure that accidents like this didn't happen in the first place. Will this be perfect? No. Look, Bill Gates makes mistakes. Ford and Chrysler, private companies, make mistakes. It's just that in the private sector, when you make a mistake, you lose money, and this tends to stop you from making too many more mistakes, because if you do, you go bankrupt and you're taken over by more efficient people. So to get back to your question of homesteading, that this ideally would be you mix your labor with the land or the water and you get to own it. Nowadays, we might just get things in the private hands, and the key is to get things in the private hands. That's something that the Soviets learned in 1991 when their economy went kablooey. And now they're doing a lot better. Well, the way they privatized, it was a little problematic, but at least it's in quasi-private hands, which is better than the Soviet system of central planning.
Right. So we can cover some of the issues that come up when the government is the property owner. But first, I want to know, is that the correct term? So the government is the property owner of the Gulf of Mexico? We don't have the same... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. In effect, the government is the property owner. Another way of putting it is that there's really no owner. It's an unowned resource. But either way, it's economic illiteracy. It's economic debacle. When the government owns something like the post office or the public school system or the projects, the housing projects, it screws it up.
Right. So
when it's not owned, it's no good either.
And private owners have a certain value that they've determined for their plot of land. This is what they can get out of their plot of land. So how does the government even try and find a value for public land? How do they go about doing that in a case where they've got, this $20 billion escrow fund that BP has put up? How did they come up with that number?
Well, it's pretty arbitrary. The government could have an auction for its land, and that would be one way of determining it. But in the private sector, the way you determine the value of cars or shoes or wristwatches or land or houses or whatever is by the market. You buy and you sell, and you get a market price every day.
Mm-hmm. So in this bill, currently, with all this public land, who can even claim a loss on their land that they don't own? Like a fisherman or a chef whose business has lost money due to a decline in seafood, can they sue BP?
Yeah, well, this is for the courts to decide, or for Obama to decide, I guess. And I don't know how the courts will determine these sorts of things. But, no matter how they decide, there is some sort of problem, at least for the libertarian. Look, suppose you own a restaurant and I decide not to patronize you, even though I've been a regular customer of yours for years. You can't sue me because we have an arm's length arrangement. I come at will to your restaurant. Well, if I decide not to come to your restaurant because I want to go on a diet, you can't sue the diet people. So I don't really think that restaurants should be able to sue BP. I think that the only people that should be able to sue BP are people whose land gets oil on it, or fishermen maybe, because in effect you've gotten oil on their land, which is the ocean. But it's interesting that the way these people are going is just nothing short of horrible. If you wanted to get a list of what not to do with the oil spill, you should consult what Obama is doing. For example, first he's not allowing poor Bobby Jindal, our governor, to put berms, that is, big sandbanks, to protect the Louisiana coast. I don't understand that. Surely there are some sort of states' rights where Bobby Jindal, if he wants, can put in sand protection for the environment. Another one is this thing called the Jones Act.
Mm-hmm.
What's the Jones Act? The Jones Act is this piece of labor legislation which says that the only boats that can ply the waters of the Gulf of Mexico, or indeed our coasts in general, are boats that are owned and operated by Americans. Well, America is not the world's leading expert in everything, and when it comes to clearing up oil, there are other countries, such as the Dutch, who are very used to dealing with oil spillage because of their dikes, and those guys have got much better technology, techniques, much better trained people on their boats, and they've offered to come in and help for free, but the Jones Act says they can't, and Obama is beholden to the unions, and he's not allowing them to come. It's very similar to what happened in Katrina, when FEMA wouldn't allow people to come in from, Ohio or Texas or wherever they wanted to come and help us. And, there were all sorts of boats with hotel accommodation on their boats, and FEMA turned them away. FEMA turned people with tractor trailers full of ice or water or orange juice. Very similar situation to what Obama's doing. It's almost like he wants to make the BP disaster even worse.
Right, but at the same time, they'll blame it on BP. I have a quote from Energy Secretary Stephen Chu. He says, "I don't want to dwell on coulda, shoulda, woulda. There's nothing I can really point to that we shouldn't have done based on what we knew at the time." So you bring in these regulatory agencies that aren't experts in the field and let them guess at it. with a very high learning curve.
Yes, well, people are now blaming private enterprises, saying, see, BP, British Petroleum, they're a private company, look what they did, we need more government. But this is nonsense. This is nonsense on stilts. The Minerals Management Service required of BP that they file a plan with them in terms of what will happen. Well, BP did what the MMS said. It's the MMS's fault for not better regulating. It's that old refrain. First, the market is there, and the market is not perfect, so there's a little problem, so they start in with regulation. They have Regulation A. Well, Regulation A causes problems. Instead of going back to the free market system, which is not perfect, but a lot better than government, they go to Regulation B, which screws things up even more, and they say, well, see, the market is failing, we need Regulation C and D.
Right.
And I think we're up to X now, or Y or Z.